Hey everybody, Big J, Anderson Mountain View Farms. Welcome back. Got Lil on the camera, say hey.
Hi.
TV.
Hi.
Now, today in part 4 of our 5-part series on building an analytical mind for personal stewardship and professional success, we're going to be talking about what, TV?
Negative numbers. Specifically, negative numbers are used in temperature, especially when the temperature is below 0, but Big J talked more about that.
Right, so temperature. Now temperature is something that we tend to think of all the time. Thermometer, right, goes down to a certain point. We'll just call this 0 degrees. And then as it goes down, they start to get negative, right? Say negative 10 degrees. Up here, we've got positive 10 degrees, right? So temperature is a real world example. It's really what it's a number line. We think of the traditional number line, right? 0, and then we got positive 1 over here, negative 1 over here. Well, the thermometer is pretty much this flipped vertically, right? So negative numbers give people a really hard time. We don't tend to think in negative numbers. The only thing that we even remotely think in negative is temperature. Accounting oftentimes can be used to show as negative when you have loss. When you're, say, if you start out with $5,000 and now you owe $20,000, so you're way, quote, in the hole, you're in the red. So there's different expressions used that are talking about the negative end of the spectrum, if you will. So I'm going to do some stuff here to kind of help you with this process. Now remember, we've been building so far when we were looking at problem solving, fractions, and then in the last episode, graphing, and of course now negative numbers. So we're building on a lot, right? And this is cumulative. Math is cumulative. So you can't just, oh, we're going to learn graphing and we're going to forget everything we learned about fractions. No, it builds on itself. And that's why you have to master those things. You've got to practice. You have to start at the beginning, build those blocks up, and then you get stronger. Then you start to see all these different integrated parts, just like you would learning a language, right? Kind of the same thing. So when you do these negative numbers, you've got something simple. 3 minus 5, you should just think immediately that's negative 2. All right? If you've got something like 12 minus 13.5, it should immediately come to you, this is negative 1.5. I can't tell you the number of students, bright students, that would look at that and be like, what is that? And especially when I throw in this decimal, or let's just add a little bit to it, 10 minus 12 and 3/8, right? My answer is going to be negative 2 and 3/8, right? So when you start to add that, or if it's more complicated, if I happen to add, if I got two negatives, negative 12 minus 12, which ends up what, when you do these, plus a negative, ends up being negative 24. These are kind of simple right here. But that really gives people a hard time. All these negative numbers, it starts to become a big ball of wax. But what I want you to practice on initially is just getting in the habit of the negative numbers. Don't apply the fractions yet. I mean, you should have been mastering fractions themselves. You get to the negative numbers, just take a little bit of time and just do a bunch of these simple ones. Negative 3 minus a negative 3, 2 minus 5, negative 57 plus negative 32. And just practice the negative numbers. Start with the little ones first, again and again and again. But when you practice, don't just use just the numbers themselves. I want you to use a thermometer that we were talking about before. We'll just say this is 0, and these are negative, and these are positive. Don't just simply use just the symbols. You've got to get into the habit of word problems. So make these into word problems. You can say, hey, today it started out at 32 degrees. The temperature blizzard came in. It dropped down to negative 5 degrees. What was the difference in the temperature drop? And then it went back up 10 degrees. And what I also want you to do, that we're going to be doing with all of this, once you kind of get the hang of that and you keep practicing those, is before you put this with the fractions, we're going to put all this on a graph. Now, because we're going to use all 4 quadrants, not just this one. Going to use all 4. So you get into the negative quadrants whenever you get onto these, right? You get dealing with negative numbers in your x and your y. This one right here, relatively simple because it's all positive, right? Get into these, something is negative, whether it be the x or the y or both. So, say for temperature, and you're charting over time, all right? Even start something in the past. One thing that's used in there almost is kind of negative in some ways is BC and AD, right? One's going this direction. You got AD versus BC. When you think of just a time, it's kind of done the same way in some sense. Is put it on there. Put that thermometer here. Negative numbers going up and down. So then you're practicing the graph. You're using problem solving. You're remembering your degrees. You got your input, output, right? You got time, say whatever date it happens to be. And then over here, I'm just going to put temperature, whatever the temperature is, right? This can be dates, it can be hours, minutes. It just has to be consistent all the way across, right? And you want your distance between these to be consistent. So that's what I want you to do. Don't just simply do a bunch of problems that say 3 minus 4 and 3/8 or whatever. I want you to look at a real chart. Go and look at a real weather chart, weather graph. Negative numbers up and down because the temperature fluctuations, things like that. That will help you get used to it, because what's the whole point of all this? It's not so you can get past the next test, right? It's so that you can build an analytical mind, and you've got to master negative numbers to do that. If you don't master negative numbers, you're going to hit a ceiling, and that's as far as you're going to go. But you really need to master negative numbers because of how far that they will take you. Again, like we said, temperature is a big one to go at, look, analyze, break down, then create your own chart. You're going to put it on this right here, on this Cartesian plane. Typically we call it the 4-quadrant graph. Same thing with accounting. Over time, made money, lost money, right? How much of a difference? Where am I at in the end? Look at a bunch of charts and then create charts. That's what you've got to do. A lot of this, we're up to part 4 in our 5-part series, is a lot of you taking the initiative, doing the work. There's methodology to help this, and I hope this has been very helpful to you. But you're going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to sacrifice maybe some extracurricular activities for a while until you kind of nail this down. It's just like if somebody's basketball player, right? Maybe they're having trouble on the free throw line. What's coach going to tell them? Hey, for 2 hours every day for a month, you're going to shoot free throws. All right, until you get good at it, consistent at it, at least short up to a certain point. So when you get fouled and you're on the line and there's 5 seconds left and your couple of free throws are really going to switch the game, you can step up, make those shots, right? But it takes practice, it takes sacrifice to get good at something. This is no different. This will carry you the rest of your life. I mean, I look at this stuff, I eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. I'm looking at charts, looking at graphs, looking at financial records, comparisons all the time, and it will really pay off. Now, if you need help, always here. You can check me out, AndersonMountainViewFarms.com. If you don't use me, that's fine. Find somebody else. I really want you to do this. If you're younger, get into it now. If you're older, you can always take a step back. The last episode in this 5-part series that we'll check out is going to be roots and exponents, just as critical. We're going to really kind of hone in on area and volume. Roots and exponents, that's where you really see it at least up to the consumer trade math level, and then a springboard up into much higher math. So, again, glad you could join us today. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.